Good evening. Happy Monday. It is Monday, August 3rd, 2020, and it's what I call Man Up Monday. I am Nicole Everett, the host of Conversations with Nicole, a talk show based here in Tallahassee, Florida, focused on connecting the community through conversations. On this Man Up Monday, this is an opportunity for me to engage with my guests and the men, the brethren, the guys, the fellas. And we have a action-packed show for you tonight. Our brother that is my guest tonight, I have been wanting to have a conversation with for quite some time now. So it is truly my honor and pleasure to have him here tonight. I have been admiring him from afar, and we kind of travel in some of the same circles because we both do community work. But before we get started and before I have him come on and introduce himself, we need to know who is tuning in with us tonight. So please tell us, what city and state are you viewing us from? Just put that in the comments. We'll give you a shout out. And also, if you have any questions, any comments, by all means, put them in the comment box and we'll try to get to them. Please like, please tag, please share. This is going to be a great conversation on this Man Up Monday. So let us know where you're tuning in from. Again, in the comments, just put your city and state. Give us a shout out. Let us know where you're watching us from. I can't believe it's August already. We are 7 months into 2020. And yeah, this has been quite a year. I see you, Raymond, from Newport News, VA, my cousin. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you. Anybody else? Who else is tuning in? What city and state are you tuning in from? We want to hear from you. So, great day here in Tallahassee, hot one. Doesn't seem like we received any of the residue from the storm that was passing through, but we are grateful. We are grateful. All right. I see you, Tyrone McGriff from Tallahassee. Thanks for tuning in. All right. Camry. Camry was on a couple of weeks ago from Quincy. We got Maine Shula, one of my great supporters on here as well. Thank you, Maine. Appreciate you being on. Yes. So, again, this brother I have been admiring from afar. He has been very instrumental in Amendment 4, which gives the rights of ex-felons the right to vote, and been on the political scene for some time now. But he's also the pastor of Life Church International, and he's an author. He has his own radio show. So without further ado, welcome with me, Pastor Gregory James. Yay!
Wonderful. Well, listen, let me say, first of all, thank you. And I am just really beyond elated to say that I'm on with Nicole, Tallahassee's own Oprah. So
Yes.
how I waited for this moment.
Oh my
I
gosh.
felt so, I can't even explain it. So I won't even go into it. So I'm just glad to be here with you tonight.
I'm just so glad to catch up with you. He so graciously agreed. This is past Greg's bedtime, but he said he'd stay up and chat with me. So I count it an extreme honor and pleasure. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Absolutely.
So for my viewers who,
Well,
I know
where do we
you have
start?
your own fan base, but for my viewers who don't know you, tell them where you're from, what you do, and who you are.
Can you hear me? Because I've
I
lost
can.
hearing you.
I can hear you. We can hear you. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes. I can hear you.
Okay, now I hear you. Okay, great. Well,
Okay.
listen, I am from here, Tallahassee. I've been here just about all of my 25 years.
Did you
And,
say 25 years?
you know, I can't hear you.
Oh my gosh.
Okay,
Come on, 25 years.
okay, I hear you now.
All right.
Yeah, well, yeah, 25 years of my life I've been here, and that's the youngest side of me. There's always two sides of us. There's the older side and the younger side. So I celebrate the younger side, which is the 25-year-old side, which I just had a birthday on the 26th of July, which made me more than 25, but I appreciated 25. But
Okay.
right here, and with that being said, I started a ministry here. That's after I came back from this long sabbatical that I was on, which was
Mm-hmm.
I guess I left in
Uh-oh.
Bureau of Prisons. I was sentenced to a life plus 40-year sentence. So I came back in 2008.
Okay.
So with that being said, Nicole, you tell me where you want to go from there. I mean, do you want to hear about that in between time, since this is our first time sharing with your listeners and your fan base?
I do. I do. I want to hear about that time in between. So yes, please do tell.
Well, as many people know that are part of our audience, and in 1995, I was arrested here in Tallahassee and
Mm-hmm.
was arrested for conspiracy to distribute three major drugs in three different states, and was sentenced to life plus 40 years. And it,
Wow.
it was so amazing because it was a situation that has really, made me a better person. As a matter of fact, I tell people all the time that prison experience, it did not devalue me, but it added value to my life. I walked away after almost 13 and a half years with so many powerful principles that I placed my platform to live by on. And it is because of that experience that I can really be the man that I am today. And most
Hmm.
times, a lot of people run away from their experiences, and
Mm-hmm.
they try not to make it a part of their conversations. But I allow myself to let that be known, because there's Google and there's so many ways to research people. So I want to give you factual information about the Greg James that you may be talking to. So therefore, you won't get secondhanded information. So the experience of incarceration is one that have birthed. It was the birthing place that really gave my life more purpose and more meaning. So because of that, I'm able now to talk to you tonight about the global pandemic. I'm able to talk about uh, the era of equity and the 2020 election and so many more things, because they're not just conversations, but they're life encounters that made me
Mm-hmm.
understand what a pandemic feels like. It made me understand what equity feels like. And it made me understand the value of elections. The 13 and a half years that I spent behind bars, they taught me the things that I now experience in life. So it was through that experience that I birthed three books while there. And I'm getting ready
Wow.
to release another book that I've written called The Power of Being Desensitized. And I believe we're in an hour whereby people are now living life desensitized. There's no feeling. They're walking in a place of numbness, and they're just desensitized to what's happening in our world. So that was a part of my life as well. So I wrote out of my own experience how I became desensitized just to live the life of being incarcerated. So with that, 13 years, I was released in 2008, and I came back to a community that I had once torn the fabrics apart. And I came back
Mm-hmm.
with a desire to become a needle and thread to kind of mend the fabrics that I had, torn apart. So, uh, if of all the work that we've been doing here, it's because I'm now trying to be that solution as opposed to being that problem. So once again, that's my story.
Hmm.
One of the most relevant
one of the most, not just relevant, but one of the most powerful selling books that is moving now is the book that I wrote called Leverage. And every time I look up, the word leverage is being used, and every time I look around, there are conversations about leverage. So it's within that book that I've taken the opportunity to show people how to take a liability and turn it into an asset. And coming out of prison, being labeled as an ex-con, an ex-felon, facing all of the challenges that we do face when we try to enter back into society, it's really a liability over your life. But I was able to
Mm-hmm.
take that liability and turn it into an asset. And in so doing, it has landed me in places that only God could orchestrate because of the experience of prison. I've had the opportunity to serve under two White House administration presidents with insight on one when Obama, I'm my brother's keeper initiative. I was able to
Mm-hmm.
serve through that whole initiative with insight, and even under this present administration, because of my having a relationship and a cellmate whose father was in prison with me,
Oh
Charles
wow.
Cushman, his son, Jared Kushner, who's the senior advisor to the president. And I tell this story all the time, and a lot of people try to make it appear to be more than what it is. But when you understand how God does things, then you have to understand that what you're hearing, you're not just hearing it. When you understand that Joseph was placed inside of the pit, when you read that
Mm,
story, Joseph went to the prison at the expense of his brothers, but inside of the pit, inside of prison, somebody remembered him. And when they got into the palace, they remembered Joseph being an interpreter of dreams. And it was his gift that brought him to the palace to save his family and others by
mm-hmm.
interpreting the king's dream. So when I tell people my visits to the White House has nothing to do with Donald Trump as being president, but it has everything with God as being God, Lord, and Savior. Why?
Mm,
Because it was at a time when they were doing prison reform. And Jared Kushner recalled the days that he would visit his father while he was a student in Harvard Law School. And I would sit
mm-hmm.
in the visiting room and talk with them. So, therefore, my position of being placed in that opportunity to talk about what the first step act needs to look like and what kind of insight I can give based on my experience, it was a God movement. It wasn't a Republican movement. It wasn't none of that. And I try to
Mm-hmm.
tell people until you understand how God operates, then me having a conversation trying to explain my position is useless and fruitless because you'll
Absolutely.
never get it. So my life,
Absolutely.
Nicole, has been one whereby I've seen the hand of God move, and it placed me in different positions, not for me, but for the help of others. And I'm grateful for that. So thank you. That's my introduction, and I approve that message.
All right. Well, I appreciate that that message and giving me that history. I have some more questions, but we're gonna move forward. We actually have a question from Erica. She wants to know where can we purchase the book Leverage?
Well, Erica, I tell you, you can contact me if you're on Facebook. You can contact us on Facebook. At one time, it was on Amazon, and what happened? I did a major mistake. But you can contact me through our Facebook Messenger, and we'll make sure that you get a copy of it.
Okay, very good. Okay, so let's move on to global pandemic. I too celebrated a birthday in July on the 20th, and it was the beginning of my 50th year. And I have actually been calling 2020 the year of Jubilee since before 2020 even arrived, because, from a biblical standpoint, the year of Jubilee, which represents 50 years, was a time of restoration, was a time of refreshing, was a time of release, right? And I feel like this pandemic that we're going through is representative of that in many ways, because we are being forced to rest and to be at home, to shelter in place, be with our families, to just kind of reorganize our thoughts and our activities and that sort of thing. So I just wanted you to speak to that in terms of this global pandemic and what the effects have been, and how do you view this pandemic on
Wow.
any level?
Well. Listen, I have to take consideration of how you see 2020, and I respect that wholeheartedly. But but because I look at it from a different standpoint, and when I look at 2020 as we begin our year at our ministry, I remember being sentenced to life plus 40 years, and the
Mm-hmm.
number 40 means time of testing. So
Mm-hmm.
when I began the new year at Life Church International, I said to our members that this is going to be a year whereby we're going to be tested in so many areas of our life. Because when you put 20 plus 20, I know everybody says the year of perfect vision, it's the year of Jubilee, but I took it from a different standpoint, and I took it from a standpoint of a year of testing. 20 plus
Okay.
20, 40. I know for me, 40, when I was incarcerated, it was a very testing time. And I say
Mm-hmm.
that to say that when I was scheduled to be released, I had served almost 12 years on a 15-year sentence, and I was getting ready to be released, only to discover that I had to go back inside of the prison to serve 40 more years. So
Wow.
those 40 years became a year of testing until I got all of the paperwork squared away. So moving into this year and sounding the prophetic alarm from our ministry, I prepared the people of our church to know that you're going to be tested like never before. And here
Mm.
we are in the month of March, the first quarter of the year, hit with a global pandemic, a pandemic that puts all of us in a place, as you say, of rest. But it's also a place where we're being tested. And I think that the impact of the pandemic and it's that it has had and is still having is affecting all of us. But I feel and believe that, and this is a spiritual insight of mine that I share. I feel that we as African Americans are being tested even the more
Mm.
because of when we look at the Bible and when we look at the book of Exodus. We have to discover and see how the children of Israel were tested under Pharaoh. And I tell people all the time that the pandemic is creating pandemonium, but in the midst of pandemonium, we're going to have promises that are going to be fulfilled. So
Mm.
the global pandemic is doing several things, but let me highlight two. First of all, it
Okay.
is affecting
Mm-hmm.
minorities, because we are feeling the greatest impact. It is affecting women, especially when it comes to minorities, when it comes to employment, when it comes to women employment, because the jobs that minorities hold and women hold are being impacted. So this global pandemic, Nicole, has caused us to question what is being done across our world, what is being done even in our cities. I mean, sometimes I ask myself, if I was in charge, would I be closing down everything or would I have everything open? How would I go about it? So there's great impact that is happening. And we look at the fact that when it comes to our health issues, how we're being impacted, when it comes to our employment and how we're being impacted, even when we look at our health, how we're being impacted. So we're at a critical time. We're at a
Mm-hmm.
time whereby it's really, and I want to use what you have declared this show to be. It's time for us to man up. And I think this is a time whereby the man, listen to what I'm about to say, the man in
Mm.
this pandemic must take his position so that the promises that have been made to the man can come to pass. That's a little one Bible 101. But this pandemic is really calling for the man to get in his position. It was only
Mm-hmm.
after Adam got out of position that the world experienced a pandemic.
Listen.
Okay, the world became in total chaos when he got out of his position. And I
Mm,
believe that this pandemic is causing us to get back in our rightful place. Since the month of
mm.
March, the first quarter, nobody knew that when I reached the month of March, the first quarter of 2020, we would be all on house arrest. Nobody knew that. Nobody knew that we would be sent home, not to leave the house.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yes,
beautiful part of it for me is that I would be on the phone with some of our members and I said, okay, now this is how you deal with home confinement. This is what you do. Find you some good books to read,
listen.
put your schedule on the wall, because I did it. 3 years of being in confinement is enough to be trained to teach others how to go through it. So I think that we're in a great moment. It is a chaotic moment, but what I know about chaos is that it creates collaboration. And so that's why I said we're in a great moment, because people who have never joined hands are now joining hands in the midst of chaos. So some people look at the glass as being half full and half empty, but in the midst of what we're seeing, let's see the beauty that is being displayed in this pandemic moment.
Absolutely. I think it also breeds creativity as well. You see a lot of just things being created, whether that's visual arts, performing arts, things of that nature, because people have this time of sheltering, this house arrest, if you will, and you're trying to figure out what to do. I think mental health has also been a big issue during this time, and people have had to kind of come to terms with maybe some things that they have put on the back burner or have been so busy with their busy lives that they, hadn't addressed or processed. So, all of these things are occurring during this time, which, like you're saying, is a time of collaboration, of creativity, of coming into self, to the extent that we have not. So, very well put. Thank you for that, Sarah. I appreciate that. So, not only have we had to contend with this pandemic, but we have had a great deal of social unrest. First with the death of Ahmaud Arbery, then with Breonna Taylor, and then finally, although there have been other incidences beyond this one, but the death of George Floyd just kind of sounded the alarm around the globe. And as a result of his death, um, Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben got fired. Several Confederate statues were dethroned, were taken down. The Confederate flag is no longer flown over at NASCAR. So a lot of things have taken place as a result of protests and riots and people saying enough is enough. So, what's and I think this is ushering in what some call the equity era or era of equity, where we're looking at how there can be equity um, amongst the races, especially here in the United States of America. So, tell me your take on that.
Well, I mean, it's I think it's paramount to see how one man's life
Mm-hmm.
has shifted the whole global world. And Nicole, I always have to be mindful that things just don't happen. And I just believe that God chose George Floyd's life to be the life that shifted us in 2020.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I feel that when I look at what we saw in Minneapolis, it caused the world to wake up. And then it began to bring about sorrow, if I would say, on the hearts of many who
Mm-hmm.
felt as though they had mistreated African Americans in the course of their life or in the course of their father's life. But we saw so many people who were trying to mend what they felt like had been a bridge that was broken by someone in their generation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Looking at what we say equity, looking at the era of equity, I think that we're still a long ways off from
Mm-hmm.
seeing fairness. We're a long ways off from seeing justice. But even though we've had NAACP, a long-standing organization, the SCLC, we've had many organizations that have been there. The BLM movement has really across this nation sparked a cry for some fairness. And the
Mm-hmm.
question that I kind of wrestle with some of my peers and colleagues is that when we talk about social justice and when we talk about fair application, the question really becomes uh, when we look at it, are we really seeing justice the way that it should be?
Mm.
My issue that I constantly am wrestling with is that the equities that lie among us. I'm grateful for the movements that we see. I'm
Mm-hmm.
grateful for the cries. I'm grateful for equal opportunities for jobs. I'm grateful for equal opportunities for women to be in political seats. I'm grateful to hear that we need an equal playing field when it comes to African Americans and other race. I'm grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sounding the alarm, but I'm saddened when I see the racism among ourselves as African Americans. And I'm saddened when I see how we don't allow the equity to be a part of our own lives.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in a great place to shift two cultures. We're in a great place to shift the culture of this nation, but we're also in a great place to shift the culture of African Americans throughout this nation.
Mm-hmm.
And so George Floyd's death was the timing in the midst of a pandemic, the
Mm-hmm.
timing that calls for all of us to see real transition take place in this nation. Only God can orchestrate such a move that we are now seeing. I don't see it no
Mm-hmm.
other way. I don't see it no other way. Here's a man who had told his teachers that he was going to change the world.
Mm.
That was that was his writing. I'm going to change the world, not
Mm-hmm.
knowing that his death would change the world, not knowing that the timing of his death would cause transition in the midst of the troubled pandemic.
Right.
The world is transitioning. So we're in a. I have to always say this because I just feel and believe it that we're in a great time. We're in a great
Mm-hmm.
time for us as African Americans to really wake up, unify, and empower ourselves. We will never see real equity. We'll never see real equity until we become owners, till we become manufacturers, until we become distributors. We'll never see real equity. I mean,
Mm.
at the end of the day, we cannot continue to lead the nation as the leading consumer and not being able to create the kind of owners and create the kind of manufacturers and create what we need to make sure we can leverage, here it is,
Mm.
leverage our position as African Americans.
So, and I agree. I agree with that. But I also want to bring up um, the topic of systemic racism, right? So this suggests that racism exists in basically all of the systems that exist here in America: judicial system, government systems, business systems, healthcare systems, education system, law enforcement system, and that these systems are doing what they were designed to do, which it's not about the upliftment of Black and brown folks. So when we talk about the era of equity and we talk about systemic racism, um, do you see the two meeting and collaborating, or somehow finding some happy medium?
Well, what I really see is that if there's going to be and I don't think we'll ever eradicate racism. I think that it's rooted in the hearts of a system that has been passed down from generations to generation, and we just can't describe racism as one race against another. Sometimes the biggest racism is within your own race.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's a hard pill for people to swallow when I say that, but I say that without no fear or contradiction, because at the end of the day, we find ourselves operating in a place of racism amongst each other. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when I'm not being supported by those who look like me, who uh, uh, serve in my neighborhood, then that's a form of racism. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't say that, but that's
Mm-hmm.
it. But
Yeah.
but you feel that my ice is not cold enough because
Mm-hmm.
my ice machine does not look like the ice machine on the other side of the highway. So
Mm-hmm.
so so it's imperative that we understand that the equity level of fairness must take place first of all within us. Once we as a race, once we as a race of African Americans, once we begin to start standing for each other, standing with each other together, then we're going to move the needle to begin to not eradicate, but we're going to slow down what we see, the racism that's in the justice system, the racism that's in the employment
Mm-hmm.
systems. Why? Because it would. Here we are now in a time whereby we can empower each other. We can empower people that can serve and speak on our behalf, and we have to be able to have a position to let them know that we are supporting them and we're standing behind them when they speak of the racism that they see in justice systems, in employment opportunities. I mean, so we the two will never meet until the until the equity or the fairness begins to start being seen in our eyes. I first of all got to see fairness towards my brother before I
Mm-hmm.
can talk about fairness towards another race. I've got to
Mm-hmm.
first of all learn how to be fair with him. And that's our biggest problem. And I think someone just placed it on the screen that it's a heart issue. And it's
Mm-hmm.
an issue of the heart. And when we realize how important it is to have pure hearts, clean hearts, then and only then can the two be eradicated. And as long as the heart is not moving in the right direction, we're going to constantly see what we're seeing. And I want to applaud you for as I view you from time to time on your show. You're tackling those hard subjects. You're bringing them to the forefront, and it is challenging the mindsets of those who are viewing, those who come back and watch the replay. And I hope and pray and live for a day that we can all be in a place of harmony, all in a place of peace. But because of what has been passed down in the minds of people, we're going to always find ourselves fighting the inequities of life. We're going to always find ourselves fighting the injustices of life. We're going to always find ourselves fighting the spirit of racism that is existing amongst our people, amongst other races. We're going to always be in this battle. And the only
Mm-hmm.
way that we're going to win is that we begin to start becoming more informative, becoming more supportive, becoming more educating of those who need to understand the value of us supporting each other. So,
Amen. No, that's real. I appreciate that. Yes, I do try to tackle some of these more challenging issues. It's not all just, the lighthearted conversations, but I think we need to address them, and we need to keep these conversations going because, maybe there needs to be a shift in our mindset about some things. Maybe some of our thoughts, some of the things that we have held near and dear are no longer serving us well, and we need to adopt some new mental models and some new ways of thinking and doing things. So I appreciate that. So yeah. All right. So let's transition on to elections. Elections. We got the August 18th uh, election coming up, and then November. I know you have been quite the champion for Amendment 4, which gives ex-felons the right to vote. And, I know on your radio show you've had you and Attorney Mutaki Akbar have been tackling lately a lot of political issues. So I'm gonna just let you have at it. Tell me all of whatever it is you want to talk to me about as it relates to elections in 2020.
well, I mean, I think we're in this is a very it's a monumental year because so much is happening in this year. I mean, we're like you said, we're dealing with the global pandemic. We're dealing with the nation being shifted because of one man's life, George Floyd. We're seeing as we look over the spectrum of our nation, we're seeing those who are declaring that police department needs to be defunded. So
Mm-hmm.
so it's a major year, and it's a landmark year for me because I'll be voting for the first time because of Amendment 4. And I'm grateful that I've worked with some amazing people, Desmond Meade, and so many
Mm-hmm.
more who work in leading the efforts for, first of all, collecting all of the 60, 70 plus thousand petitions that was needed some years ago just to get it heard, then collecting the almost a million that was needed to get it on the ballot, then traveling throughout the whole state, ensuring that people got out to vote. Then when it got on the ballot and we begin to celebrate, then that's when we start facing the inequities of politics, and
Right.
that's when we begin to see how unfair the system is when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to those who are returning. So Amendment 4 has been an amazing there. We give big shots out to those who are supporting the Florida Restoration of Rights Coalition in helping to solidify fines for those who are paying fines. So with that being said, it's an amazing year, and we're talking about 1.5 million people who would have had the right to vote if by chance we wouldn't find ourselves now on pause because the governor's legal team has sent in and motion to stay the right for those to vote. But in the
Mm-hmm.
meantime, we're still on the campaign trail for making sure that people vote. We're making sure that people registered all the way up until July 21st. This year, I certainly want to give a big shout out to my co-host on Wake Up Wednesday, Attorney Mataki Akbar, for
Mm-hmm.
he keeps me kind of like under the radar because sometimes I may slip and say the wrong thing at the
Not
right
you.
time.
Not you.
Yeah, it happens sometimes because I get a little heated because I know what I've gone through, and
Right.
when I see what I see, it becomes very bothering, and so he keeps me moving in the right direction, and I think we're at a place right now whereby this we're like what 15, maybe 15 days away from
Mm-hmm.
our primary election, and it's so
Yeah.
important. We've had opportunities in our local area, and I know that there are people who are watching your broadcast from around this globe, and they're getting ready for primaries as well. But just here in our
Mm-hmm.
local area, one of the things that have really taken to heart with me is that when I look on a national level at how women in leadership are being attacked, how women who are vying for political seats are being attacked on a national level, and then it trickles down to a state level, then it trickles down to a local level, even in our local city. When we look
Mm-hmm.
at how Black women are being attacked, I have made my stance that we're not going to tolerate that. We're not going to, and I think this is one of the biggest sounding alarms that I'm making, that we're not going to allow you to attack or discredit, our female African American women who are serving in office. I mean, we are not, and I'm grateful for being able to have a platform with Attorney Mataki Akbar on the Wednesday
Mm-hmm.
Wake Up Show, where we voice our opinions and we
Right.
voice our concerns. So this election is uh, very dear to me because I'm voting. I've been involved in elections since I was released from prison in 2008, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times in my walk with elections, Nicole, I've always been sometimes contrary to the majority. And I guess that's why I went to prison, because I didn't always do what the majority did. So I was
Mm.
I was that guy who was a little bit different. Okay, so
Okay.
with that being said, there are several candidates that I have made a choice to support, and some of my peers and some of my colleagues in ministry have taken a different role, but
Mm-hmm.
I make decisions based on my heart, based on the conversations that I have, based on the level of accountability that I am going to be having a watchful eye on them. So therefore, that brings me to a place that once that person is serving, I want to always know that you're serving for the best of our community, and that you
Mm-hmm.
always know that there's someone who you sat down with and you talked and they shared with you the issues of our culture, our community, and you were open to listen, and you were open to see how we can make changes to make it better. So that's always been my position when it comes to an election. That has always been my stance, and it's always been, how can I make my voice heard so that the people who I'm able to represent and serve can get fair. We're talking about equity now, and get the fairness that they deserve. So
Mm-hmm.
this year's election, everybody has to get out to vote. And I don't think we should be begging Black folk to vote.
Mm. You shouldn't
If
be.
you can't see what's going on,
Mm.
if you can't hear what's being said, then I don't think people need to be begging you to vote.
Okay.
I
Y'all
mean,
heard.
that's just that
I
that's
said.
that's my opinion.
I get you. I
And
get
and
you.
and 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 at the end of the day, to hear people say, "Well, my vote don't matter, it don't count," I think that's a sad indictment on your
Mm.
mental state.
Mm.
Because if you realize, here it was in a gubernatorial race, less than 2,000 votes, I mean, could have made the difference. Then your vote has value. Your voice has
Mm-hmm.
value. So 2018, August 18th is going to be amazing here in our city. And I want everybody to tune in, because we're going to be sharing some of our selections, some of our choices for different races. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
my first time voting, so I'm excited about it. I mean, there were
Right.
times when many times before, um, people who were voting sat down with me and said, "Pastor, I know you can't vote, but let you vote through me. But this time I'll be
Mm-hmm.
voting for me through me. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll be making that known. So I'm excited excited about that. I'm excited about some of the races that are before us. A public defender's race that's locally here with
Yep.
Jessica Uri and Andy
Mm-hmm.
Thomas. I'm excited about the race with Angela Dempsey and
Mm-hmm.
Kelvin Alvarez. I'm excited
Mm-hmm.
about that. That has become one of my most memorable moments because of some of the things that I've been able to experience from people who I thought were friends. But I'm
Uh-huh.
excited about
We're not gonna go there.
and I don't go there. But you gave me
No,
free time, but I respect it. But I'm excited
because I
about
got more
that.
questions.
Okay, well, come on. I'm excited about Elaine, who's running for city commission as well.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So in 2008, did you think this day would ever come? Did you ever even imagine that as felons would have their rights to vote restored in the state of
Well,
Florida?
no, not at all. I mean, being incarcerated really began to open my eyes to laws, policies. I mean, it really began to change my whole perspective about how important it is to be abreast with what's going on in your city, what's going on in your state, and even your nation. But
Mhm.
never did I imagine that 2020 would be a year, 2019 would be a year that the rights of ex-felons would be restored. I recall when I was incarcerated, Charlie Chris did automatic restoration of rights, and that was fine. I mean, I was excited about it. But then when he left from the seat of being governor, automatically that was reversed. So
Mhm.
never in my wildest imaginations did I feel or believe that this day will come. But we worked diligently towards it. And with that being said, people need to know that if you work hard at something and if you work long enough and if you be consistent, then you can see the results at the end if you just don't give up. And that's what we did. So here it's a reality now. And I'm voting because of all the work that so many people believed that we were doing was the right thing to do.
So I got a question on the floor. Johnny Johnson wants to know, do you plan to seek office someday?
Wow, Johnny, man, listen, thank you. But what I realized, Johnny, it's not the person in office that has the power, it's the person behind the scenes. So
Mm,
therefore, seeking office would not be something that would be in my vision. It because at the end of the day, I like doing what I'm doing. I think that this what I do behind the scene gives me a greater platform than the person who's in office because they're limited. They're
mhm,
subject to so much. So I don't think that would be something that I would do, Johnny. But thank you so much for asking that question.
mhm. So I was listening to a broadcast on NPR that talked about your voice. And I thought about how voting is one aspect of your voice, right? And how, we utilize our voice in different ways. And like I said, voting is one of them. Now, have mentioned the radio show, Wake Up Wednesday. Talk to my viewers a little bit about, Wake Up Wednesday and what when you're on Wednesday, of course, but the time, the station, and kind of what you do on your platform.
Well, I mean, we are on every Wednesday from 2 to 3. You can catch us on our Facebook Live page. It's Greg James Community Show, or you can follow us at Greg James on Facebook Live. We're on, and one of the things that I know, Nicole, since getting out of prison in 2008, since getting out of prison in 2008, one of the things that I knew that I had to do, I had to be a part of the media. I knew that I had to get on air because of all the things that I had been privy to inside of the institution, how uh, watching the news was a priority for men in jail,
Mm-hmm.
reading the Wall Street Journal, reading the Washington Post, the New York Times. Those were those were essentials to us being able to keep abreast of how laws were changing. And so when I got out of prison, this is so amazing. And I went to 1450 at the time, WTAL, Reverend Holmes. That was the first station I went to. And me and Apostle Jaquel Lawson was on every day from 3 to 6. And it was very important because it was so important that I was able to share information, share insight without any fear or contradiction of what people may say, because it was inside a prison that you had to have a sense of boldness. You had to have a sense of understanding that you say what you mean what you say. You had to have a sense of understanding that all you have is your word. And so what I needed to do was come on the air, not for it to be my show, but for it to be a show that involved the community. That's why it's called the community show, so that we can keep the community informed, we can keep the community involved, and we can keep the community inspired. And we can keep the community with needed information. And that's the key. The Bible says like this: people perish for a lack of
Life of
knowledge.
knowledge.
So we want to
Yep.
always be able to provide them with knowledge and insight on what's going on. And some voices will never get the message unless they hear it from Nicole. So that's why it's so important that you keep doing what you're doing.
And you too, sir. So one of my loyal viewers, Ozzy, has a comment that I think is worthy of sharing. He said, "We need to understand as a race of people in which it is only one race, that is the human race. We need to internally work ourselves so we could work with others. We need to cut off the envy and jealousy that divides. We need to work within our community and be a support to those who are striving to make things better in our urban community. Know thyself." So, I struggle with this, right? Because yes, while I do agree that the human race is the only race, there are differentials. We get very caught up on black and white, especially in America. I can't really speak for other countries. I have visited Japan and Cuba, but it's different over there in these other places. But I think within our own culture as African Americans, I agree with you in that we need to act more as a collective and not be divided against one another. We need to support one another. And that support comes in many different forms and fashions. It's not just where we spend our dollars, but it's also, you know, being present, giving room and space for people who may need someone to talk to, or, to need our advice or words of encouragement or things of that nature. Or need to be, disciplined, or you know called out on some things. And I think there's a way to do that. You speak truth and love to situations, right? Doesn't have to be demeaning and belittling and downgrading and that sort of thing, but we just need to know how to support one another. But I also think that whole knowledge of self is important. And it sounds like you, through your life experience, through your time away, spent time getting to know who Gregory James is and who you wanted Gregory James to be. So can you speak to that just a little bit?
I think one of the greatest things that I experienced in the period of isolation was the period of insulation.
Mm,
Sometimes you have to find a way to insulate yourself so that you can be a better you. Truly, it was the best time of my life because I got to know me. I mean, I lived my
wow.
life prior to prison, trying to make sure that everyone, and sometimes I even feel myself doing this now, trying to make sure that everyone was okay. I wanted to make sure that, I made everyone happy and made
So
everyone all
people
right.
pleasing, people pleasing.
Yeah. And the most miserable person was me. So
Hmm.
it was when I was isolated, it wasn't nobody but me and me. It was the three people that was living inside of me, the person that I used to be, the person that I was now, and then the person I was going to be. So that time
Mm,
alone gave me an opportunity to see and understand that this who you was, this who you is now, but there's a greater you. But the only way that you're going to find that greater you is you got to do some inspection within.
mm,
So I think that you said it very clear, and you said it so wonderful, that you must examine yourself. And it was during that time away, Nicole, that my life really changed. I mean, to the point that I really began to reflect back on how I lived life. I really had no value for my word
mm.
because I had a lot of money, and I felt like money could answer all of the situations that I dealt with. If I said I was going to meet Nicole for a meeting at 2 and I didn't show up at 2 and she called me the next day, I said, well, hey, listen, I missed the meeting. Here's $500-600. And there was nothing more to be said about it. That's how I
Oh,
lived my
wow.
life.
Okay.
And I'm saying that using you as an example, but I would miss meetings. I would say I was going to do stuff, never did it, but I would always make sure that I could do whatever I could to help folk. I was always
Mm,
helping, but my word in my sense had no value, but in other people's sense it meant everything. Even though it might have been 48 hours later, it still
mm,
had value to them because they
mm,
got more than what they expected. But inside of prison, I had to examine myself and realize that I didn't have money to control things in there. Only thing I had was my word. And in prison, that's what folk value, your word. And I'm big on that. If people I mean, this is one of the principles that I live by now. If people say something, then they have to be man or woman enough to say it again, because inside of that institution, different from Harvard or Yale or FAMU or FSU, you
mhm,
only say what you mean and mean what you say. And you always
mm,
have to be able to say that if you said it once, you say it again. And that's
mm,
what bothers me. And I like the comment that the young man made about envy and jealousy. People are always saying things that they have no real knowledge of. And then when they're confronted with it, then they cannot justify or cannot even stand firmly and say, yeah, that's what I said. But I live in a
mhm.
place whereby, I'm so happy with who I am that if I say it once, I
You
only
can say it again.
say it again. So I talk
Yeah.
two ways, behind your back and in your face, but the message is still the same. That's
All
what
right.
that's what the life of prison taught Greg James. That's what
Okay.
made me a better me. Being able to say what you mean and mean what you say and keep it moving. And
Okay.
not worrying so much about being accepted by people, but just knowing who you are and knowing
Mm,
whose you are. And at the end of the day, let people deal with who they are and who they think you are until they get to know who you are. So
mm.
so
Okay.
I'm so delighted to be here with you,
Well,
even though it took almost 3 years, but I'm grateful, you
don't
know.
start with me, Greg James. I got the receipt on my phone.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Uh-huh. Right.
But
Well,
you know
it has been
what
a
I'm really
go ahead.
thankful for the opportunity to share with you. I really have watched you from afar in your work, and I think that it's amazing the voices that we have in the city and the work that they do. And I think a lot of times people don't really understand how important it is to really celebrate the people who try to sit and have inspiring and informative conversations through whatever the medium is to give hope and insight to a community that has gone deaf. Listen to what I'm saying. They've gone
That's
deaf to hearing how
desensitized, right?
changes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're desensitized. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you have voices like a Nicole, or voices like a Judy Mandrell, or a Mataki Akbar, when you have voices like that who are on the airways trying to breathe life back into the dullness of hearing, then it's so important to thank God for those people. So I celebrate you, and I celebrate all that you're doing
Oh,
to make this city and this world a better place. So thank you again for the invite.
amen. Thank you. I give thanks. I appreciate it. To God be the glory, because this is truly not a work that I ever thought that I would be in. This is a God thing for sure. But you know, I appreciate you and what you do, and I too have admired you from afar, and I'm so glad to get to know you tonight in this public forum. But you know, nonetheless, still getting the opportunity to get to know you a little better, and look forward to greater collaboration. You know, we've been talking about doing some things, so you know, I really want to bring those things to fruition soon. I have some great things coming up, and you know, hopefully you can be a part of that. So I want to thank the viewers who have been on here tonight and who have, you know, chimed in, you know, given some comments and some questions, and you know, that just have supported this platform. So I'm really just grateful, just truly grateful. Now, as we wrap up, how can folks connect with you, reach out to you, and find out about this new book, The Power of Being Desensitized?
Well, listen, I would encourage all of you who are tuned in, just follow me on Facebook. You can follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter. I mean, that will definitely keep you in the journey that I'm in. You'll be able to go with me step by step as I walk through what I would call this valley of the shadow of death.
The Valley of the Shadow
Because
of Death, that's what you call it.
yeah, that's what I mean. Because every day it's like, every day we're walking through a place that we see the shadow of what is luring over us, and we're just trying to make sure that we
Mm,
escape. We're walking through the pain of being seeing people homeless. We're walking through the pain of seeing people incarcerated. We're walking through the pain of seeing abuse, and it's a shadow that is
mhm.
is over us, but we're walking through it. So you can follow us on those social media platforms,
Okay.
Facebook. You can follow us there. And once again, let me say this: thank you so much for the invite. Normally, I would be in bed, probably really fast asleep now. I've got to get up real early in the morning, so if I don't make it up early in the morning, I'll credit it to you for keeping me up at 10. I'm used to going to bed early. After 13 years, you practice being in your cell at 7. It's a habit
I get
that's
that.
hard to break.
I
Okay, but
understand.
thank you
I
again.
understand. No, I appreciate the sacrifice tonight. Just charge it to a conversation with Nicole, okay?
All right,
All
thank you.
right. So I want to encourage the viewers to keep these conversations going and definitely get out to vote. Um, August 18th for the primary, November. If you have not registered, it's too late to register for the primary, but it's still time to register for the November election. So check with your local supervisor election. I think early voting started today here in Leon County. And I think that runs for 2 weeks. And then, of course, your regular election day, August 18th. So vote, 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 vote. If you know somebody that needs a ride, give them a ride to the polls. And if you also do a mail away ballot, you want to get those in prior to August 18th. So I want to encourage you to do that as well. So again, once again, thank you, Pastor James. And we'll be tuning in to Wake Up Wednesday and looking
All
out for that
right,
book. Looking out for that book, The Power of Being Desensitized.
absolutely. All right,
All right.
thank you.
You're welcome. Y'all have a good one.